Hi there, and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome Zoey Henderson from Fungtn. Hi, Zoey.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, thank you. How you been?
Good, very well.
Where are we calling in from today?
I'm actually calling you from North Wales.
Oh,
I'm
lovely.
hidden away on the beach.
Oh, very nice. So great to have you on the show. Can you start by telling me more about what Fungtn is?
Yeah, so I started Fungtn and the Functional Brew Company last year. It was kind of my lockdown baby, and we brew craft beer to 0.5%. We're alcohol free, but we brew with a finish of medicinal mushrooms. So we're adding that little bit extra into the beer, which is setting us apart and making us a little bit different.
Great. So there's quite a big rise of NoLo brands, which is basically no or low alcohol, especially with millennials and Generation Zs. Why do you think this, especially that generation, is adopting at a higher pace at the moment? And what's the general trend that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think there's a combination of factors. So there's always been people that have wanted to be more mindful and to drink less alcohol. And I think older generations, I'm classed as a millennial, I'm an elder millennial. And there's always been people that have wanted to reduce their drinking, but there haven't been the products available for them to do that. So, you might want to reduce your drinking, you go out to a pub, you go out to a venue, and literally until about 4 or 5 years ago, all there was Coca-Cola, soft drinks or coffee. And so people were not encouraged, let's say, to think more mindfully about their drinking and to have more options to drink adult drinks, but not soft drinks. So that was one part of it. So now we're the generation that has this availability of products out there. So it's made it a lot more easier. Secondly, I think information. We know alcohol is a toxin. We know that to its extreme, there are serious health benefits from consuming lots of alcohol. The same that we now know there are lots of health issues for consuming lots of animal-based proteins and meat, and we have this information, but we have this information widely available to us through the internet and through published papers and research that just wasn't available to my mum, for example, when she was in her 30s. There was just no way to find that data unless maybe you were in the scientific community. So the freedom of information, the freedom of data that we have available, I think has been a massive thing. And finally, I think for the younger, I think they're called Gen Zs, who are in their early 20s now, I think social media is having a huge effect. One, in sharing information about health and bodies, and maybe to not a really positive effect. People are very aware of body image and stuff through Instagram and through social media, but also people's social lives have until last year been a lot more open to the world. So when I was in my 20s at uni, falling out of a bar drunk, there was nobody there that was going to record it. Maybe someone would have a little disposable camera, but you were lucky if those pictures ever came to light. But now people are very aware if they're going out getting drunk all the time, it's going to be on Instagram and shared around their friends and peers, before they've even got home. So that, I think, has had a huge effect as well. So it's a combination of factors that have made now really a great time for people to be more mindful about the products that they're consuming, alcohol and food products as well.
Yeah, I never considered that point of the sharing aspect on social media before, but yeah, that's a really strong point, especially with their friends. They don't want to see themselves in that condition. But there is I guess a close connection between mindfulness and not consuming so many toxins whilst you're going through mindfulness, and that's a strong connection, right, between the two. That some people are trying to avoid that, obviously.
I think mindfulness, the word gets bandied around quite a lot, and people think, oh, is it meditation? Is it doing yoga? But actually mindfulness is really just about taking stock and taking note about the things that you are doing. And when we're talking about this consuming, really assessing, is this going to serve me? Is this going to be the best thing that I can do for my health, for my mental health, for my physical health? And really considering that, you know, we've come out of the 80s and very much an era of excess and fast and work fast and eat fast, and, you know, before then microwave meals and everything needed to be quick, and it was all about that excess. And now we're realizing that that's not good for our bodies, that's not good for our mental health, and actually we need to be much more considered about the things that we do in our lives, the pace at which we do them, and the things that we put into our body. And then that, combined with all this science and data that's coming out around alcohol, mental health, you know, plant-based diets, and the health and wellness aspects that have to do with all of that collectively, I think now again has made this time where people are really understanding what it is to be mindful and to really consider the things that we put into our bodies, because the input directly affects the output. You know, we've known this, let food be thy medicine. People have been saying this for, you know, a long time, but now I think we're coming full circle back to going, okay, we really have to think about natural ways and personal ways that we can take back control of our health, and the way that we can change our health and the way that we can really make a difference is those 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day when you're putting something in your mouth, when you're eating. That's something you have total control of for the most part, and now we're being a lot more mindful about what we're doing when we are imbibing.
Yeah, and let's also not forget about the impact that it has on the National Health Service here in the UK, right? With excess alcohol contributing to a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been something that, you know, charities like Change UK have always pushed, the fact that alcohol, it's not just the damaging effect it has on you personally in excess, it's the damaging effect it has on communities, the damaging effect it has on health services. And, you know, we're learning now it's consuming excess alcohol directly affects your immune system. So if you don't get into trouble on the evening because you've got really hammered, you're much more likely to be susceptible to illness, depression, and issues the days on following from getting really, really drunk. You know, we know that low immunity, we know that people who suffer from chronic diseases and suffer from health-related illnesses are more susceptible to bugs and viruses, you know, not just COVID, the colds and the flus and other things that come along. If you have, you know, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with mental health problems, having a hangover is the worst thing you can do. You know, it amplifies everything. Even the most level-headed, grounded, chill person on a hangover, you feel a bit more anxious, you feel a bit more insecure, you feel a bit more needy. So imagine that when you've got severe anxiety or issues going on, it really does just blow up the situation. But we're in a really interesting place where we're actually unraveling a marketing myth that has been sold to us and embedded into us culturally now for hundreds of years. And it's the same with the meat and dairy industries. It's like we've led to believe that good times, celebrations, special occasions have to be framed with alcohol. Oh, it's not a party if you don't get pissed. It's not a birthday if you don't have a glass of champagne. It's not a wedding if you don't have a toast with alcohol. So ingrained alcohol into our culture, you know, and if you can manage to drink a little tiny bit of alcohol here and there and you're very mindful about it, that's not a bad thing. But we've come out of a culture now, especially like the 90s and, like I said, for the 80s, the ladette culture, getting pissed, you know, wearing that crown of having a hangover was somehow, you know, you didn't have a good night, you weren't cool and you weren't fun unless you were going out and getting hammered. So we're now unraveling all of these things. And it's the same with the plant-based revolution. You know, if your plate didn't have meat on it, it was just a plate full of sides. You know, where's the meal if there's no meat? But that was all because that was marketed to us that way. And it's exactly the same with alcohol. But now, because of the times we're in, because of the products, because of the science, because of the fact that we're unraveling and becoming savvy to marketing messages, we're now going, oh, okay, it's not about the alcohol that frames a social occasion. You know, it's the ceremony around having a good time, being with friends, getting dressed up, feeling good, finishing your working week. Those are the things that contribute to having these great occasions. It's not the alcohol.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of the larger drinks brands have obviously seen this trend now they're creating their own ranges. I'm seeing more and more sections coming out, full sections in supermarkets, just for this area. So how do you feel about that? I mean, when it first came out, I remember there was Beck's Blue, right? Which didn't taste great, if I remember.
No.
But I think they have come a long way now. Especially, I'm seeing like you can get gin now, alcohol-free gin.
Gordon's, yeah.
Gordon's are doing that now, right?
It's amazing, and I think it's, you know, the early adopter products, you know, they were getting the products right. They weren't necessarily really producing products with the consumer's end goal in mind. It was more like, we need to produce something that's alcohol free. So the first products that are coming to market were, you know, they were designed for the designated driver. They were designed for those poor people that really wanted to drink alcohol but couldn't. It was very much like a sorry product, you know. It was very much like, here's our alcohol-free version for when you're that poor person that can't get pissed. You know, it was very apologetic about being alcohol-free. Whereas now the way that people are developing liquids is all about the experience, the taste, and actually you're just creating another amazing liquid. The level of ABV is irrelevant. You know, it's not the reason why you're drinking a beer is not to get pissed now. It's because you really enjoy the flavors. So that's the frame is changing. I think it's great that big brands are jumping on the bandwagon and pushing it forward, because they've got the marketing budgets to really push what us smaller producers can't do. You know, Seedlip was one of the first non-alcoholic spirits to come out. It's a great brand. They had some really good financial backing at quite early on, and they were able to really push the marketing message and become a global brand and help raise the bar for non-alcoholic spirits, and actually to show that they should be taken seriously. And it's the same with Guinness, it's the same with Heineken, Beck's Blue, you know, all of them producing 0% products. They've got the budget to really push those doors open and get to consumers and to normalize this new product range that's coming out. And it's the big guys that have got the power and the push with the supermarkets to really increase the shelf space. What we saw in the plant-based market is there were lots of very small producers coming to the market to begin with, and it took a real while for actually to expand shelf space in retail with plant-based foods. We're there now, but it's taken a lot longer than I think we've seen with alcohol. It's only really been a couple of years. We've gone from 0 to, you know, having half an aisle, and it's been these big brands pushing through and demanding that shelf space, and customers going, I've seen that ad on a huge billboard or on TV for Heineken Zero, I want to have this product. And then when they get to the Heineken Zero, they then see maybe some other small producers of non-alcoholic products around them, and then that's helping grow the industry. So I think it's great that they've got on board, and it's also very indicative of the trends. No huge company is going to invest R&D time and marketing spend and workforce spend in developing a product that they don't think is going to be viable, not on the scale that they are now. So that really shows that, you know, low ABV, no alcohol is going to be here to stay, and it's not just a kind of a superfood trend or something that people are going to get bored of very quickly. So it's a good sign.
Yeah, and I think that marketing spend will help push out the message to more people and encourage more growth of startups like yourselves, obviously entering the market and paving the way with, you know, a brand that's been there from the beginning in this space. So thinking about the vegan side, why isn't all beer vegan and ales vegan?
Yeah, I think people started putting vegan on products, beers and some products that you thought were obviously, it's just hops and water and, you know, barley and malt, whatever. How is that not vegan? But actually, a lot of beer manufacturers traditionally have used two things. They've used isinglass, which traditionally was fish guts, and the linings of fish stomachs, which are very, very fine fibers, to filter the products. You know, now we have microfiber, we have other things, luckily, that technology has given us, that we don't have to use that product. There's also sometimes calves' livers, calves' stomachs have been used, and other weird things to filter the product. That was obviously when we had no other methods of filtration. Now, thankfully, science has kept up with that. but also lactose is used quite a lot as a thickener. You know, the body and the mouthfeel that you get from beers sometimes comes from the starches and the sugars that are created during fermentation. When you make an alcohol-free beer, you aren't fermenting at all, or only up to a very small point, and you don't get that thickness of the starches being released into the product as much. So you do find quite a few alcohol-free beers will put fillers such as maltodextrin, which is vegan, or they'll put things like lactose in it. That gives it a body and a mouthfeel and a creaminess. It's not necessary. You can make a great beer without it, but it is something that people will use as a bit of a quick route to getting that body in their beer.
Yeah. In terms of like the traditional beers, the alcohol beers, which ones do you know that are definitely sort of vegan? The big brands. I know Heineken is, because I looked it up the other day.
Yeah, Guinness weirdly has now gone vegan,
Okay.
which I read the other day, and I think Budweiser is vegan. Most of the big producers, because of, you know, the scale at which they're brewing, make it vegan. You know, they are going to use micro filters for their filtration.
It doesn't make sense. That is an old process.
And they're brewing a few like full strength lagers and quite mainstream beers. You'll find it more with the smaller craft beer producers, who will use, you know, lactose in it, or maybe who are using more old fashioned filtration methods.
This is definitely a unique position for you to be, you know, a craft beer that is also vegan.
Yes, we're vegan and we're gluten-free. So we're ticking all of those boxes, but it has meant that we've had to be quite creative in developing our recipes to make sure that we're essentially not just creating a hop fizzy water, which I actually have seen. There is a hop water that is being released in the States at the moment, which is quite cool. But this is not it. We are first and foremost a craft beer. So we brew to a traditional craft beer recipe. What we found is the mushrooms, because mushrooms are 90% polysaccharide, they're starch based. By adding the mushrooms towards the end of the point of the finishing of the fermentation and the moving into the conditioning stage, we put the mushrooms in. They then sit there for 2 to 3 weeks, and the starches break down in the mushrooms further, and that's actually giving us quite a nice body to our beer. So it's something that we didn't expect. We kind of guessed when we were doing R&D, but it was really great to see that actually happening, that the beers were given body by using these mushrooms.
Yeah. What would you say are the health benefits and what are the types of mushrooms that you're using in your beer?
So the whole functional medicinal mushroom space is quite a new, I say new old. It's like, you know, people thought coconut water was new when Vito Coco brought it out, but, you know, people have been drinking coconut water for millennia. And it's the same with mushrooms. People have been, you know, using medicinal mushrooms and functional mushrooms for thousands of years. The kingdom of fungi is a kingdom in itself, plants and animals and fungi, and they say for every one plant that we have on this earth, there are 6 different types of fungi. So that just shows how many species that we have. And like any plant species, you know, there are certain ones that have different compounds and that have been revered and used in herbal medicines. And medicinal mushrooms are really kind of the superfood class of fungi, if you like. So, you know, we are very familiar with button mushrooms and portobello mushrooms, and Asian cultures have a host more mushrooms that they use regularly in their cooking. But medicinal mushrooms, some of them are edible. Lion's mane, for example, is delicious. Tastes a little bit like smoked chicken, when I remember what chicken tastes like. It's got quite a meaty texture to it. It's a really delicious mushroom. And you find that quite a lot in farmers markets. So that is an edible one. But others like reishi and chaga, they're very, very bitter in their natural state, and you wouldn't be able to eat them raw. You'd have to boil them down into a tea or create them into a tincture. And these mushrooms, the medicinal class of mushrooms, have been used in traditional medicines, folk medicine for thousands and thousands of years. And what's interesting now is the science is now coming out with the data to show what these compounds are. So the old shamans and the old healers knew that they used reishi to help lower inflammation. They would use reishi, and it was called the mushroom of longevity. It seemed to be that the people that took the reishi a lot lived longer, they had less health issues. We now have the science to pull apart the compounds within the mushrooms and say, okay, they're really high in compounds such as beta-glucans. Lion's mane is very high in compounds such as adenosines. And it's these compounds that we know do X, Y, Z in the human body. So science is now really kind of coming up and supporting their traditional uses, which is great. So we use at the moment 3 of the most, I'd say, well-known medicinal mushrooms. We use reishi, chaga, and lion's mane, and chosen them because of their ease of bioavailability, their kind of flavor profiles. What I found was really interesting is these types of mushrooms don't taste like normal mushrooms. So they don't taste like the mushroom you'd have on your pizza or on your risotto. They really have a nutty, earthy, bitter flavor profile, very, very similar to hops. So by playing with different beer recipes and different hops, we kind of worked out which mushrooms we wanted to use. Lion's mane, I'd say, is my favorite mushroom, and it's the most interesting mushroom. This mushroom has been used for a long time, and more now in kind of modern times, for a cognitive support mushroom, if you like. So it's full of a compound called adenosines and herenosones, and these help synthesize something that we have in our brain called nerve growth factor, and that does what you think it will do. It helps support and nourish your neurons in your brain, and can help with memory, cognitive focus, sleep patterns. And this mushroom is amazing, and this is one that we use in our IPA. Chaga is it's a conch. It actually grows on the side of birch trees, so it grows in old growth forests in Siberia and Northern Europe, and it's been used by local people for thousands of years for general immunity. Round the winter time, where people were more likely to get cold and flu, you'd have teas made of chaga and tinctures made of chaga, very much like in the UK we used elderberries. It's really well known for its antioxidant and immune supporting properties. And then the third beer that we use is reishi, and this is the one that's been touted as the mushroom of immortality. It was so revered that only the royal household in China, or royal households, were allowed to use this mushroom. And if any of the poor people were caught picking these mushrooms or growing these mushrooms, they'd be seized, and they weren't allowed to have them. So they were so revered for their health benefits and as a tonic. We now know that they contain antihistamines. We know they contain anti-inflammatories, and lots of antioxidant properties. So they really help your body fight free radicals that can cause damage and aging. So science is now giving us the information that we need to back up why they've been so popular in traditional medicine for so long.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, huge range of benefits between all of those, actually. You mentioned about the science is catching up, especially by looking at these types of compounds within the mushrooms. Obviously, on the plant-based food side, there's a lot going on with mushrooms. People trying to invent loads of different types of foods there. When there's the science is also catching up with psychedelics and looking at psychedelics within the impacts that's made. Obviously, your beer isn't a psychedelic beer, so it's not magic mushrooms, but
it is not.
Yeah. What are your thoughts around that space?
I mean, it's so fascinating. I think fungi, we are more fungi than we are human, if you like. So there are more cells that we have inside our body, inside our gut, that are bacterial microbes and fungi. So fungi is in us, all around us. It's part of everything. There's a lot of research that states that how we kind of crawled out of the primordial soup in the sea, grew legs, and came to work and be animals on land was to do with a symbiotic relationship with fungi that were helping our bodies create their immune systems and create this ability to be able to evolve into creatures that came out of the sea and were on land. So fungi is really integrated into into our world and into our lives. And it's something that I think is coming out a lot more. There's some amazing mycologists. There's a guy called Paul Stamets who is doing a lot of research and work on mushrooms in terms of their ability to create habitat regeneration, to eating up oil spills, to, you know, we can create vegan leather from mushrooms. They're an amazing protein source. Some of the most well-renowned drugs that come from medicine, you know, come from mushrooms. Penicillin is a fungi, for example. Statins come from a fungi. So wow. I think people don't realize how much they're integrated into our lives, and actually integrated into everything we do. And psychedelics is something that's coming back in and get a resurgence. So in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of work done in Johns Hopkins in the States, people like Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, who were really working on showing how psilocybin, which is the active component within medicinal mushrooms, can be used to help fight depression, can be used to help fight anxiety. And there was a lot of experiments with psilocybin and LSD done in the 60s. Vietnam hit, you know, the war on drugs hit, Nixon hit, and all of that got shut down. And there was some of it went underground, but a lot of it from an industry perspective, from the universities and the hospitals, was completely shut down. Thankfully, this is now changing. So over the last couple of years, King's College in London, Johns Hopkins back in the States, have started to do experiments again, really to check the benefits of psilocybin on humans. I was actually part of the trials in London that happened 3 years ago. I'm working with some amazing psychologists there, and taking volunteers, healthy volunteers, and then volunteers with depression, and looking at how it affects your brain at the point of having psilocybin, and then the afterglow that you have for kind of for weeks and days after taking it. Nootropics is becoming a really huge thing. You're seeing a lot more products coming out, nootropics, and helping brain focus. And Paul Stamets, the mycologist I mentioned, has created a nootropic stack. So this is basically layering different vitamins, minerals, and compounds that you take on a daily basis. And he's created one to fight depression and anxiety, which is a combination of lion's mane mushroom, psilocybin mushroom, and niacin. And putting these together and taking them in very small microdoses, spread out, you know, every day. Then you have a break after a month. You keep going, and it's having better effects than antidepressants. It's much gentler. There's none of the negative side effects that you're getting with antidepressants. So I think we're realizing now that modern medicine is amazing. You know, if you get a scratch on your leg or you get hit by a car, you're probably not going to die of an infection. You're going to be able to be fixed. You know, childbirth, all these wonderful things. But we are also creating medicines that are a very much blanket approach to curing stuff. You know, antibiotics resistance is a huge thing. Yeah, and we're finding, we're giving people these antibiotics. They might be killing the pathogen, but then they're killing off loads of other bacteria and fungi in us that are vital for our survival. And people now are realizing that the drugs don't work. So, you know, these modern drugs that we've created, and now we're seeing that they're not working, and they're not being productive the way we'd like them to be. And we're looking back to nature and natural sources to help them. And I think we're going to see a lot more research coming out on psilocybin and how that can affect depression and schizophrenia. And it's really exciting stuff going on.
So what was the results of that study, the King's
College? It came out as they've had the first early trials have shown positive results, and they've actually had it now approved to be able to start working with small doses of psilocybin through registered psychologists. And now they're starting their next round of trials. So they showed, you know, positive effects of having, it was a double-blind placebo trial, but for the ones that actually had the psilocybin, positive effects in their state of mental health during the experience, after the experience. Anxiety levels went down. People's kind of overall depression levels, if they had quite severe depression, were showed to go down. They didn't have the kind of dips you get when you start an antidepressant and then when you come off it, if you haven't sorted out why you're depressed in the first place, you then come down off it, and there's lots of negative side effects to becoming dependent on Prozac or antidepressants. So the work is continuing, and hopefully I think in the next 5-6 years we're going to see it really coming through as an approved treatment for clinical depression.
Yeah, wow. So can you tell me a little bit more about your actual product range?
Yeah, so we launched with 3 craft beers. We wanted to first and foremost make an amazing craft beer. It just happens to be one that doesn't have alcohol. We worked with the 3 of the most well-known types of beers. So we did an IPA, we did a lager, we did a Citra beer, and we really wanted to stick to making them in a traditional craft beer recipe. So we chose not to de-alcoholize our product, which is quite a popular way to make a non-alcoholic beer, but it involves quite a lot of expensive equipment and kit, and it just means that it limits the amount of brewers who can make our products. So we naturally stop fermentation with a natural enzyme that comes in and kills off the yeast. So we do it up to just under 0.5, and then we cap the fermentation there. Apart from that, we essentially make it in exactly the same way that you would make an alcohol beer.
Yeah. Do you have some of the beers there to show?
I do. I do. So this is Fungtn.
Right.
Yeah. This is our little bottle. So we an interesting challenge that we had, if you like, when we came up. We chose this bottle. I chose this bottle because not many people were using it. I thought it was really beautiful. It had really nice shelf stand out. And I thought, wow, on a shelf of beers where everyone is, kind of choosing 1 or 2 different bottle shapes, this would be great. Not to realize that the reason why people don't use it is because hardly anyone can bottle it, and it's really tricky to get the right fitting for the machine to make it work, but we have luckily found an amazing brewing partner that can do that for us. But yeah, I think the bottle for me was really important. We have launched cans now as well, with response to feedback from people, so we're available in can and bottle.
Yeah, and the cans are also for all 3 of your product ranges, right?
They are, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
they are.
What's actually your background story, and how did you get into this space?
Yeah, so I've been working in hospitality for coming up to nearly 20 years now. My first kind of jobs were in cafes, bars and restaurants. I trained in advertising and marketing, came to London, worked for some big advertising agencies, realised it wasn't for me, and then set up a juice bar about 9 years ago in London. Ran that for a few years, and then I moved on to set up a little coffee shop in East London, and really kind of got into food, nutrition. My juice bar is running juice detoxing programs and really starting to understand more about plant-based foods and healthy eating. And then I've always been working in venues and working in events and things to do with hospitality. And I think for me, I love the social ceremony. And again, like we were talking about it before, it's been so interwoven with alcohol. And I really started to see that it wasn't the alcohol that was necessarily driving these social situations. And my last role was working for a really great company called Redemption Bar. And Redemption were the first alcohol-free, gluten-free, vegan venue that were completely true to all those principles. And I was working with them at a time where we had 1 bottle beer, we had a couple of spirits, and that was it. We made our own cocktails and all our shrubs and stuff. And by the time I left, just over a year and a half ago, we had beer on draft. We had about 5 different bottles of beers, ciders, wines, 10 different spirits. So it was with Redemption that I really kind of saw how the non-alcoholic market was growing and got really excited about the possibilities of that. And just seeing that you could operate a really buzzy, nice bar, restaurant space without alcohol, and actually it felt exactly the same, which then your light goes on, you go, it's okay, it's not the alcohol that's doing all these things to us. So that was really kind of the point where the little things started going on in my head about creating a product. And at the same time, I'm studying for a diploma in naturopathic nutrition. So I'm very much looking into how herbs and plants affect us and it can affect our health. And the two really kind of came together. And I've been taking medicinal mushrooms for about 6 years. I discovered them when I went to the States. thought they were amazing. Had a few health problems that I wanted to clear up. I had eczema. I had I wasn't sleeping, not focusing very well. Started to read around to find out more about these mushrooms. Found a few that I really liked, and now kind of integrated them into my lifestyle every day. So one point I knew I wanted to create something with these mushrooms and get them out into the world, and the beer, I find, is a perfect vessel for that. You know, having a beer, even if you do not drink, you understand the universal, you know, people even say, oh, let's go for a beer, even when you're not going to go for a beer, or let's go for a drink, even if you might not be drinking alcohol. But it's just so kind of ingrained into culture, you know, whether it's after work, you've got a barbecue, you're going to a party, you know, bring some beers. And it seemed like something that just could be really a really great vessel for getting another type of functional food and adaptogen into our diets.
Yeah, that's awesome. By the way, I've been to the Redemption Bar restaurant. That is, it's the one in Covent Garden, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they were great. There was one in Covent Garden and in Shoreditch and in Notting Hill. Sadly, they had the corona hit them quite hard last year, and it's now just down to one site. But they were really championing alcohol-free, you know, alcohol-free, gluten-free and vegan 5 years ago. People were like, what
That's a lot.
What am I going to eat? A bowl of lettuce and a glass of water. And so they really were kind of ahead of their time in that respect.
Yeah. So if you think about your target audience, who would that be? How would you define them? Your customers, your potential customers?
So we sit in a really interesting space, and as I was developing the product, this is what kept kind of shining out to me, that health and wellness, mindful consumerism, it's something that, you know, it is not going to stop. It's on the rise, and people are very much now considering the products that they're taking and the food that they're eating and where it's come from. And for me, I saw these little markets popping up. So alcohol-free, NoLo is a growing market. You know, it's small, but it's mighty, and you know, it's growing every day. Functional drinks, craft beer, and then health and wellness. And there wasn't a product that sat in the middle of all of them. There wasn't a product that was an adult occasion drink. So craft beer, it was something that you would drink as a grown-up out of your normal daily, you know, cups of tea. Alcohol-free, functional, and then something that was fitting in with this mindful health sphere. And really, we've developed a product that sits in the middle of all of those. So it's for people that are wanting to take care of their bodies and taking care of the food that they're putting into their bodies. People that want to have an adult drink but don't want to have the alcohol, and people that do enjoy drinking craft beers. So it's an interesting space because we're sitting right in the middle of it. So therefore, you know, we're launching in Planet Organic in March, which is amazing.
That's great.
Super excited. And their type of customer is our demographic of customer. Equally, I'm in, you know, 4 or 5 different bottle shops and for sale online non-alcoholic beer retailers. So we're really kind of creating a third culture product for this new wave of consumer. And I think that's something that this last year has shown, that actually a brand doesn't have to be based anywhere. So yes, we're brewed in Britain. You know, my beer is brewed up in Yorkshire. I live in North Wales. We're selling to places in Europe. We're selling to bottle shops all over the country. And our model is a contract brewing model. So we work with brewers, and that is how we're going to expand into different markets, by working with brewers on the ground. So this year, our next kind of focus is to get a brewer in Europe, so we can service Europe. So I'll be brewing in Europe, Scandinavia, then to work with partners in North America, then to work with partners in Australasia, then to work with partners in Asia. So you're creating this model where you're creating a global brand that's drunk globally, but it's brewed locally.
And you can scale a lot quicker.
You can scale a lot quicker, and then people have emotional investment to the brand. You know, they found a product that they love, they think it's great, and then they're like, oh, and it's made here. That's cool. You know, they're putting money, and they're contributing to the community in which the products are being sold to. and you're reducing your shipping and your freight and your transport costs. We are exporting to Europe. We don't want to do it for very long. We want to be making in Europe. Nobody wants to be shipping containers of stuff around the place. So there's lots of good reasons for that model.
Yeah, and you've also invested quite a lot on your own direct-to-consumer channel as well, right? And so you can order straight off the website, etc.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Back in the day, which was only like a year ago, when everything was 2 years ago, when everything was normal, you'd launch a beverage straight into the on-trade. You push your contacts through there, you'd get some brand ambassadors, you get the barmen behind you, you'd be doing trade events and festivals, and that was how the product would come to market. Then you'd go for retail, and then if you had a bit of spare cash, you'd do your website and you'd make your D2C channels. Actually, it's been completely flipped on its head now. It's D2C straight away. It's a much better, for me, I think it's a much better way to launch, because you've got real direct communication with your customers. Getting lots of feedback via emails, via our mailing list, and we're talking to our customers a lot more and really understanding what they want. We release cans a lot quicker than I planned to, because we really felt that that's what people wanted. So you do get that closer connection for sure. And it's an interesting channel. Obviously, from a business perspective, your margins are better if you're selling D2C, which is always a huge help when you're starting up. So I actually think this is a way now that I think brands in the future, even when the on-trade comes back, which I hope is soon, but even when things are back to normal, I think brands will now think a lot more about launching their D2C either at launch or very, very close to that. I don't think it's going to be on-trade and wholesalers as your first port of call anymore.
Yeah. And so how are you going about marketing yourself at the moment? What channels are you using to market?
So yeah, when we're sitting with the power of digital and in this digital realm, so Instagram, we're building our followers through that. We're doing some collaborations with other brands, talking very much to bloggers and people who are within the non-alcoholic space, who are within the functional drink space, and building up a community and talking to people through those channels. Pay-per-click, digital is everything right now, driving the traffic to our websites and making sure that people are connected that way. This summer, I hope as the year goes on, we're already in February now, I'm getting a bit less confident, but we're hoping to have a summer jam-packed of festivals and events where trade events as well as consumer events. I'm not so convinced now how fruitful that's going to be. But when you're starting a brand, that's where all your marketing goes, is in trade events and festivals and stuff. So this will hopefully be happening towards the end of this year. But right now it's about building awareness. It's about getting people through social channels. I'm really helping them understand what the product is about.
Yeah. There's also been a few really successful companies in the UK that are selling IPA, like Brewdog, for example. And their growth has been quite phenomenal, and their whole product ranges. What are your thoughts on companies like that who are investing a lot also around how they're doing their logistics and using cleaner ways of distributing their cans, etc. But what's your general opinion about those sort of companies?
John, I think Brewdog are amazing. I think they've got some real balls, and they get a lot of shit, which I'm really surprised about. You see on LinkedIn and other channels, they get a lot of people giving them a lot of pushback when they're announcing that they're going to be carbon neutral, they're announcing that they're planting trees, they're announcing that their new brewery up in Scotland is all completely renewable energy. And it's amazing how many people push back against that. And it's really surprised me. And I think they're great. I think their Fuck You CO2 campaign was hilarious. It got pulled within about, a couple of days of it being live. But we need to start shouting about that. We need to use some ugly words that make some people feel uncomfortable, because we're facing a climate catastrophe. The world is literally going to hell because of our excess, and there are companies that are really trying to push forward and make a difference. And I think when you become a large company and you are responsible for generating a lot of energy and you're really responsible for having an impact, I think there is no longer the excuse that you can be complacent. You can't just ignore it. You know, if you're going to have a huge infrastructure and a huge logistics infrastructure, you need to be looking to electric vehicles. You need to be looking to making your production carbon neutral. You need to be offsetting the carbon that you are using somehow. And I think Brewdog are a really great example for that. And I think if, you know, in 5 years time, 10 years time, if we could be like that, it would be amazing. You know, we have applied to be a B Corp company. We are going through the framework of growing the business within the B Corp framework. And I hope within the next 12 months we'll be B Corp registered. And I think anybody starting a business now really has a duty to be able to be making sure that they're doing everything that they can to change the old systems and change the way that people manufacture products and do business, because those old systems aren't working. And, you know, there's a lot of people, older generations, that are still stuck in those systems and don't want to get out of them. So when younger people, younger generations that understand the seriousness of the climate catastrophe that we're in, have an opportunity to do business and to change the way things are done, to me, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, I think what they're doing is amazing.
Great. And yes, so finally you're looking to raise as well at the moment. How much are you looking at the moment, and what sort of terms do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I created this business on a shoestring. I knew that I just needed to prove the concept. I knew that I was onto a good thing. I really enjoyed the product that I've created, and I just thought, I've got to get this to market. And I just thought, once I get it to market, once I get it out, then we can start looking for investment. Because I felt if I waited to try and get the investment from the very beginning, you know, time was just going to go on. You know, somebody else might come up with an idea of making mushrooms a beer, which no one else has done yet. Or, you know, I just thought, right, let's get it out there. So while we're here, we've done it. We've self-funded so far. And now we're looking to raise between 150 to 300,000 to push us over that next step. So we need to push and support our retail listings in the UK, drive on marketing, create a bit more sales traction for the on-trade when that opens up again. And then of course, hopefully we'll have festivals and events that we'll need to be part of. So all of that takes a little bit of capital to do. Then our next process is to secure and find brewing partners in Europe and secure export and that, and try and build those markets, and then look into North America. We're already selling to a bottle shop called Spirited Away in New York City, which is run by an amazing guy called Douglas Waters. And there's these little pockets of alcohol-free ambassadors that are popping up in America and doing some really cool thing. And we've got a lot of interest over there. So I think the sooner we can get to North America, the better. So this is what our next chunk of investment is for. And yeah, we're doing an equity raise for that as we speak.
Awesome. And so what's the best way people can find you and the company? You mentioned about Instagram, but any other ways that you prefer?
Yeah, so find us on Instagram at Fungtn.brewing, on Facebook, same, and also via LinkedIn. You can contact me directly on LinkedIn, and also you can chat to us through Fungtn on LinkedIn as well. And of course, always email us, hello@fungtn.com.
Great. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Great. Yeah, wish you the best of luck for this year and how you're growing the beer, and hope people start to drink more of your beer and start reducing their consumption. And there's obviously a lot of people, right, in the UK. How much did you say there was, to me earlier, you said there was a huge amount of people who are now not drinking?
Yeah, I think it's now something like, in America, it's now 1 in 3 people who are reducing their drinking, or who are not drinking. I heard that stat the other day. I haven't fact checked it. And in the UK, it's something like 20% now of people who are not drinking, and then further people who are moderating their drinking. So it's a huge market. And as I mentioned, I think there are a lot more people who want to be more mindful, but don't have the products to make that happen. So the sooner we can get more shelf space in supermarkets, more venues bringing in ranges of alcohol-free products, I think you'll see more people making more mindful choices. And it's not just about abstinence, it's about being mindful. So, you know, you may love a bottle of wine on a Friday night with your dinner and you really look forward to it, and that's great. But then throughout the week, you drink non-alcoholic beers, you know, or you love a non-alcoholic gin and tonic and a lunchtime because you love the taste of, you know, juniper berries and everything that goes in a gin, but again, you don't want that alcohol. So I think we're going to come away from people just going, I either drink or I don't drink. On an evening, why, if you're going out drinking, why does every single drink have to have alcohol? Why can't you start with a really potent cocktail to kick off the evening, then you drink non-alcoholic stuff, then you might, you know, and it's all about that balance. But the sooner we get more products out in venues and in retail, the sooner people will be able to make those choices.
Great, perfect. So thank you very much, and hopefully see you again soon.
Awesome, thank you.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.